What is the universal approach with regards to better performance of policy and budget? Because diversified societies having different results. When policy is performance-based, budget should be spent rationally, but unfortunately, yielding different results in different societies when performance-based budget is put into practice. Why?
I mean, I would say, first of all, there is no universal application. Of course not. As noted, I would say there's continuous improvement. I mean, if you look at, for instance, the state of Arizona has had performance law, budgeting law in place since the 1990s, and they have continually, evolved that law to accommodate different things. First, having annual budgets, then all agencies going to biennial budgets, then splitting some agencies as biennial and others as annual. Moving from simple measurement development to development of strategic plans and incorporation of measures within strategic plans. And, over time, and we see this across many, many governments, the initial passing of a performance budgeting system, or I will say a performance management system, and then a layering on top of that, an evolution of the law as needed and as considered. The number one important component, I will say a universal component, is passing legislation to develop a performance budgeting system is we found to be very important to a system being developed and a system maturing and becoming more and more effective. So that provides that shared commitment on the part of the legislature and the executive in carrying forward the mission of a performance budgeting system, which, let's be clear, should be performance informed, but not performance based. I know early in my career, I used performance based, as many others did, and realized pretty quickly that we can't use performance based. It shouldn't be based solely on performance. Of course not. Our governments are political systems, and we need that politics to be legitimate. But on the other hand, we can be better informed about decisions, and by passing laws, it tells us that legislators are at least open to getting more information about how they want to proceed with budgeting in the future.
Yeah, I really appreciate the question. I think the question, how can we we yield the different results in different societies, right? I think this is such an important question. And this is also the question I think me and Katherine are sort of focusing on and trying to get to some level of better understanding. And one thing that we realized is the study of context. Mm-hmm. And just give you an example, even you would think that we are studying juvenile justice in one type of services. There should be a lot of sort of consistency around how they implement this, what are the outcomes of a performance management. But it turns out it varies too, right? It varies from state to state. And one specific example that I remember vividly is that they say the culture of the state, how they view delinquent youth is a factor in how they implement performance management. Do you come to this with the conception of we discipline delinquent youth or we serve delinquent youth? These two cultures will lead to dramatically different performance indicators. And this is exactly, I think, the context understanding is important. The culture, the process they use, the political structure, even the mix of a private and public services. In some of the states, they say, oh, what's important in our state? Lobbyists, because many of our services are privatized. Mm-hmm. So I think this round of research, it does not give us like a clear understanding as to why they are different, but it does give us a general understanding about the factors that could possibly lead to different outcomes when we're implementing on the paper seemingly similar concepts of a performance management and budgeting.
I mean, one thing we highlight in our book is the distinction between the systems, juvenile justice systems in Delaware and California, which are obviously very different. Two states that are different fiscally and operationally and structurally. And, Delaware, a small state with a small budget, certainly compared to California, and runs a highly centralized juvenile justice system, whereas in California, it runs locally organized and operated system. And both of these states have what we term as thin performance budgeting law, which is not robust in providing guidance along every aspect of a performance budgeting system, from measurement development to audit and accountability. And, these two states operate very differently. You would think maybe on the face of it that California would be able to do more with more money. But in the end, Delaware is able to illustrate use of measures and some progress and advancement in juvenile justice, some successes, whereas California's it's got too many competing competing problems and complexities. And measurement, we didn't see measurement used at all in that system. So, it's kind of interesting to look at. That speaks to what Elaine was saying, that all the many factors that can come into play in individual governments and agencies.